I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts. I was born in 1962, and my parents moved to a house on Ward Street, which is in Newton Center, in 1968. And very soon thereafter, I made friends with an elderly woman who lived down the street, and she was at the time probably in her late 50s, early 60s. Her name was Alta Maloney, and she was slightly overweight. She was not very tall. She was probably about 5'2", 5 foot 5'2". She was shorter than I am now. I'm only 5'4". She lived in a rather sharp-roofed house that I was to find out later used to be a farmhouse and used to stand on the site of what is now Temple Emmanuel in Newton. She lived on in this little farmhouse, what used to be a farmhouse, and it had a double lot, and in her backyard she had a square cement pond that toads used to breed in. It was always full of pollywogs in the summer. And Alta and I became really good friends. I was a rather lonely boy. My father was always working, and he died when I was 11. And my mother was either busy taking care of us or working too. So I had a lot of time kind of off on my own. And I spent that time out exploring the neighborhood. One of the places I explored was Alta's property. And she was unique among our neighbors in that she didn't care. I mean, more than she didn't care, she really did care. She liked having kids come visit her. And she was the quintessential sweet neighbor. And Alta lived by herself. She had a friend about her age who was a doctor, another woman, with whom she would go and spend time with on occasion. And Alta lived alone in this house, and she had grown up in this house. And I don't know if she had grown up before or after it had been moved. It was actually moved off the spot where Temple Emmanuel is now. But she had grown up in that house, and she was now in her, at that point in her late 50s, early 60s, she was still living there. I found out later, just a few years ago, I knew that she wrote for the Boston Globe when I was a kid. Boston Globe was one of the big newspaper in Boston. Boston Globe and the Herald Traveler. She was a theater critic for the Boston Globe. And I used to go over there just to hang out, and she would let me hang out. And occasionally she'd give me cookies or, iced tea, or her property was just completely overgrown. There was a huge stand of bamboo every summer that she'd pay me to help cut back and trim and keep under control. Which was always just great fun, very satisfying cutting down this bamboo. And she'd have me do yard work, and she'd pay me, and she was one of my early first work experiences. And she was just very kind, and she would listen to my troubles and my things I was interested in, and she was very patient and very understanding, and she was my friend. And she showed me around her house. She slept in what had been her parents' bedroom. And next to her parents' bedroom was a bedroom that had belonged to a young man who was her brother Russell. And her brother Russell, she told me, died in World War II. He was, I believe, in the Navy, and he died on board a ship that was sunk by a German submarine. And Alta would pay attention to me. I always called her Mrs. Maloney. As an adult, I feel like I have license to call her Alta. But Mrs. Maloney would always be there to listen to me whenever I had, problems or whatever. I can remember when I first met her, she almost immediately, she said, "We have to go talk to your parents." And she walked me over to back to our house, and we came to the front door and knocked, and she said, introduced herself to my parents, and because she wanted them to know where I was, and to ask if it was okay if I could come over and hang out. And my folks made a good decision. Excuse me, this is mine